center, you know that Krishna put you together, and you can be affectionate accordingly with Krishna as the center. This is the proper way. If one does that successfully, actually does that successfully with Krishna in the center, not just paying Krishna lip service and trying to get all the sense gratification for oneself, one will advance in Krishna consciousness. It's also possible that someone who is externally in the renounced order of life, who doesn't marry and have kids, it is possible that they are completely focused on material sense gratification in their mind. So it's not that externally what our situation is dictates whether or not we are becoming more attached or detached from this material world and more attached or detached to Krishna. It's not necessarily determined by our position, but it is determined by our consciousness, how we are able to identify something in its real form or its unreal form, right? And so Srimad Bhagavatam starts out that the highest truth is distinguishing reality from illusion for the benefit of all mankind. So there's a quote in the middle of this purport, which I absolutely love. Srila Prabhupada writes, anyone who misunderstands this perishable body to be the self and who works for it in the name of sociology, politics, philanthropy, altruism, nationalism, or internationalism, under the false plea of the bodily conception of life, is certainly a fool and does not know the implications of reality and unreality. So the idea is that we are in the material world. We're dealing with a lot of illusion, but at the base of it is the supreme reality. Krishna is within everything. At the same time, he's aloof from everything. In our conditioned state, we can either see something with Krishna in the center and use it accordingly, or we can see something and place value on it based on how it serves us. Does it provide for my maintenance or shelter or entertainment or other sense gratification? Does it stop something worse from happening to me, etc.? I'm the center, and how does this thing, affect me? How can I use this thing for my service, right? So this is the illusion, seeing ourselves as the center. Reality is seeing Krishna as the center. So each of the things we encounter, they're the same things, but now instead of using them to serve us, we're using them to serve Krishna. We're using them in for the proper purpose. That's reality. And then the illusion is using them for the improper. So one who misunderstands the perishable body to be the self and who works for it in the name of sociology, politics, philanthropy, altruism, nationalism, or internationalism, under the false plea of the bodily conception of life, is certainly a fool and does not know the implications of reality and unreality. So sometimes we get caught up in these things. We are conditioned living entities. We're not pure devotees. And our previous conditionings are very difficult to let go of if we do not grasp onto Krishna consciousness. And so what we get is a mix. We get a mixture of our conditioned nature and our constitutional nature. So although we have ties to the devotional community and we like to perform devotional activities, each of us has a very unique tinge or group of tinges of our material conditioning where we specifically focus on certain aspects of Krishna consciousness. And if we're not careful, we can mistake our material conditioning for Krishna consciousness. For example, if we if we um, if we work for this uh, misidentified bodily conception in the name of sociology, politics, philanthropy, altruism, nationalism. In other words, if we get caught up thinking that in order for Krishna consciousness to thrive, we first have to solve the problems of the world, the material world, hunger, disease, and uh, intolerance, um, all sorts of things that are absolutely a problem in this material world, right? Political, social, philanthropic, etc. Um, so if we misunderstand this, if we hold on to our material conditioning, even though it may seem positive in the grand scheme of things, we might, say, well, we're trying to make the world a better place. So that's honorable, noble cause, or so we think. And we do this without properly putting Krishna in the center, engaging that desire to help others actually engage that Krishna service. And we, instead of actually helping the soul, the others, we just focus on helping the bodies, the external situation. Then that means we're foolish and we do not know the implications of what's real and what's unreal. So familial affection means that's self-centric. It's the root of all of the only impetus for all mundane activities. The only impetus for all mundane activities. So all the mundane activities in this world are impelled by this family affection. And family affection means not only identifying with our current body, but also identifying with those related to the current body, and only giving affection based on that. Right. And so the relationships we have in this material world, they're temporary. We're eternal beings, and we may come in contact with some of the same eternal beings because of entangled karmas. But we tend to, since we don't remember our previous births, we tend to put a whole lot more value in these things. And because we do that, because we don't understand the implications of reality and unreality, or reality and illusion, we put a whole lot of time in trying to maintain this relationship in a proper way. But if we don't understand who we are, who Krishna is, what the relationship is, and how to act accordingly, then we will remain in this material world perpetually. And this is the idea. So, as always happens, when we're studying different books, we find that all Shastra is actually saying the same exact thing, right? So I mentioned that here in Mayapur, we're going through Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrita. And just today, we were talking about the same exact concept. I'm going to see if I can find it quickly so there's no dead air. But maybe I'm not on the right page now. Close. Okay, yes. So this is a quote actually from Chaitanya Charitamrita when Lord Chaitanya is speaking to Sanatana Goswami. Lord Chaitanya is saying, devotional service to Krishna is the chief function of the living entity. There are different methods for the liberation of the conditioned soul: karma, jnana, yoga, and bhakti, but all are dependent on bhakti. But for devotional service, all other methods for spiritual self-realization are weak and insignificant. Unless one comes to the devotional service of the Lord Krishna, jnana and yoga cannot give the desired results. Speculative knowledge alone without devotional service is not able to give liberation. On the other hand, even without knowledge, one can obtain liberation if one engages in the Lord's devotional service. The living entity is bound around the neck by the chain of Maya because he has forgotten that he is eternally a servant of Krishna. If the conditioned soul engages in the service of the Lord and simultaneously carries out the orders of his spiritual master and serves him, he can get out of the clutches of Maya and become eligible for shelter at Krishna's lotus feet. The followers of the Varnashrama institution accept the regulative principles of the 4 social orders and 4 spiritual orders. However, if one carries out the regulative principles of the orders, but does not render transcendental service to Krishna, he falls into the hellish condition of material life. There are many philosophical speculators belonging to the Mayavadi school who consider themselves liberated and call themselves Narayan. However, their intelligence is not purified unless they engage in Krishna's devotional service. And then Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments on that. That's, in case anyone's curious, that was Madhya Lila, chapter 22, verses 17 through 29, Lord Chaitanya speaking to Sanatana Goswami. So then Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur comments, although karma, Astanga Yoga, and Gyan are mentioned as sadhana, or practice, in various scriptures, less intelligent people do not take the final conclusion of all the scriptures. What's the final conclusion of all the scriptures? We learn this in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, same verse as the chapter number. I saw Vindhyavali mouthing it. Vedashta sarvamahame Veda. Of all the Vedas, Krishna is to be known, right? Right, exactly. Vedanta Veda. So the final conclusion of all scriptures. Rather, establish these processes as the main ones. In other words, instead of understanding the principle of all the Vedas, which is to understand Krishna, they look at the details and they think, oh, all we have to do is follow these details. That will get us liberation. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues, human beings are of many types, yet they can be classed as either inclined to enjoyment or to renunciation. In order to attain the next higher level, a person performs sadhana. However, these sadhanas are secondary and cannot be called the main sadhanas or abhideyas. The results of these sadhanas are only one further step in elevation. Considering the vastness of the spiritual goal, these results are thus insignificant and intermediate. Karma, yoga, jnana, and their subordinate methods cannot even give the result without some indication of bhakti, right? So even though there may be some results in karma, yeah, it's only however much bhakti is actually in them that can give you the result. It has to be a little bit mixed, otherwise there will be no result. If they have bhakti as their final goal, they can yield some secondary results. Thus, liberation cannot be attained by jnana alone, whereas sambandha jnana, which has as its object bhakti, gives liberation as its first result. Bhakti easily gives this mukti as an insignificant incidental fruit. Right? And of course, this continues on. It's all so this idea is that we have to understand what's real, what's illusion. Anything that we're doing where we're not actually, not just theoretically, where we're not actually seeing Krishna as the center and acting accordingly, that is illusion. Anything where we're not actually seeing that and acting accordingly, that's illusion. Now, our process, it's for everyone. No matter what station in life we are situated in, we could be living in a gutter, half dead, with nothing to offer to anyone in society, or we can be the most wealthy person, and anywhere in between. We all have the equal opportunity to advance in Krishna consciousness. So this process is the most liberal. No matter where we're coming from, there will be a Shastra that will explain to us how to get from where we are to where we want to go. Means where we want to go is to Krishna. Of all the Vedas, I am to be known. So if we're in a very fallen condition, we're only convinced, or we're only concerned with sense gratification, and we don't care about God one bit. We can be convinced by someone, for example, that, hey, if you really want to gratify your senses, there's this book called the Kama Sutra, and it will tell you how to enjoy way more than what you're currently enjoying, if that's where you're situated, that low position. And if you follow that, and even though your motive is just to gratify your senses, since you're following something that is designed by Krishna that's meant to gradually purify your consciousness, then gradually your consciousness will be purified to the extent that you actually follow, right? So in that sense, this process is the most liberal. It's for everyone. But we have to gradually understand, as we're going through this process from wherever we're coming from, we have to understand that for the most part here in the material world, we're dealing with illusion because we are thinking that we are independent beings, right? We may acknowledge that there is a Supreme Lord. We may say his names all day. We may try to engage in his service. But if the majority of our day is spent only concerned with our physical and mental well-being, providing food, shelter, political comfort, etc., and it's not centered around Krishna, then we're foolish and we don't know the implications of reality and unreality. So in order to rectify this, the Vedas is there, right? And in order to clear it up completely, because the Vedas, as the Bhagavad Gita states, can be kind of confusing. For the reason we just said, there are so many different types of people with different levels of different types of desires in this material world. And the Vedas has to reach out to all of them, right? So there are, what's the word? Concessions. There are concessions that are given in the Vedas of how to enjoy in a certain way to gradually purify one's consciousness, right? And so one can become distracted by those concessions, right? Sri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna that you shouldn't become distracted by the flowery language of the Vedas. The parts of the Vedas indeed have flowery language where they talk about these concessions where you're allowed to enjoy under certain circumstances, as long as you do it in a certain way, and then thus gradually you will purify your consciousness and come to the real conclusion. But one can become distracted by such things if we can't distinguish, okay, is this a concession or is this an actual rule, etc. So for those of us who have already become convinced that, no, I do not want to stay in this material world any longer, whether our motive is just to get out of this miserable world, or our motive is actually the right motive to actually serve Krishna. As long as we're convinced that this is what we want to do, Then we have Srimad Bhagavatam, the Amala Purana, the spotless Purana. And Srila Vyasadeva, in his maturity, compiled this Bhagavat Purana because having compiled the other Puranas, Upanishads, etc., he was despondent. He wasn't satisfied. And when he consulted his spiritual master, as we're meant to do when we're feeling this way, it was brought out that yes, you've done a great job. You've reached down to all of these different aspects of human society and
Hindu
subhuman
Krishna,
society to gradually bring them, but you didn't focus enough on Krishna.
Krishna.
So now you just write this Purana for those who don't want any of that. They don't want any other distraction, just about Krishna. So now we have Srimad Bhagavatam. And so when we study Srimad Bhagavatam, we have to understand, again, as the Srimad Bhagavatam starts out, that the highest truth is distinguishing reality from illusion for the welfare of all. So we have to understand what is illusion, what is reality. So anything where we're not actually, like I said, seeing Krishna as the center and acting accordingly, right, means we should be engaged in Krishna's service. It's not that we're the center and we engage things according to what we feel. We are engaged according to how Krishna establishes his will, and that's established through the Shastra, and that comes also through the Guru's instructions, because the Guru will only instruct you based on what's in the Shastra. And it also comes through the examples of the sadhus, because the sadhus behave only according to the sat principles that came from the Shastra. So when we successfully can see from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra how Krishna is the center and how to properly engage all of the different duties, even if it's family life, engaging that duty, Krishna service, or whatever situation we're in, how to properly engage that Krishna service. Krishna is actually the center. We see it, we understand it, not just in theory, and we're acting accordingly. Then that's when we become successful. That's when the process of Krishna consciousness starts working much quicker, right? Because this is what Krishna consciousness means. Otherwise, we're self-conscious. So we have to understand the implications of reality and unreality. We have to be careful not to become distracted by our conditioned nature, where we, because of our experiences and our acquired knowledge, etc., we focus on certain aspects of material nature and we want to improve upon them. We have to be careful that it's not wrong to want to help people, but we have to do it in such a way where we're sure that Krishna is in the center and we're doing it the way he would want us to do it. We have to remember that not a blade of grass moves without his will. So all the problems in this world, he has willed them. We have deserved them. It's not that he's mean and he's raining all this suffering down upon us. It's that we rebellious living entities have been rebelling birth after birth after birth. We've accumulated some very horrible karma, and we're getting what we deserve, or actually we're in most cases we're getting let off easy, right? We should be getting much worse. But when we see these things, when we have a nature and we're inclined to do something, whether it's a social thing, a political thing, a philanthropic thing, altruistic, nationalistic, internationalistic, we may have these tendencies and we can dovetail on those in Krishna's service. We have to make sure we're actually, that Krishna is actually in the center, right? So if we see hungry people on the street, of course, we do prasadam distribution, right? That's fine. But it should actually be prasadam. It should be accompanied by kirtan. There's a story I'll tell really quickly before we end. We were talking about this in class one devotee was telling me that one of the European countries, they had a restaurant, and it was, everyone knew that it was a Hare Krishna restaurant. Everyone knew that it was prasad. There were kirtans playing. It was there. Nobody was trying to hold back the fact that this is Krishna food, right? And the restaurant did very, very, very well. Monetarily, they actually did very well, right? Somehow the management changed. Krishna's in charge of everything, so the management changed. And the new managers thought, okay, I think we can become more successful if we don't make people feel so uncomfortable about all of the in-your-face Krishna stuff. So let's just say, we're a vegetarian restaurant, and that's that, right? And so it was still prasadam, they were still offering, but it was sort of behind the scenes, and they were branding it as, their intentions were that they could reach even more people and become more successful. Even people who would be otherwise not inclined to eat if they knew it was Krishna Prasad, they'll be attracting more people. That's what they thought anyway. That was their business model. But in not much time, that business went bankrupt. They couldn't maintain themselves, right? And so this is just one example of how we have an idea of something, right? And it's not that these new managers, it's not that they weren't using their intelligence, it's just that they weren't using it properly, right? They thought, we want to reach more people. That's good, right? It's good to reach out to even those who would not normally, take it if it were prasad. But in trying to do that, they took some of that. They can't take it away. They didn't allow all of Krishna's potencies to come through, right? And so we have to be careful when we're using our intelligence and our good intentions. We have to be careful that we're not actually going off of what needs to be done. So I want to read one more time. I've read this before, but I'm going to read it again. This is the thesis statement of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that there are countless philosophies. Means even we have our own philosophies based on our own life experiences, etc. It's mixed with Krishna conscious philosophy, of course, but we have our own way of applying it. Right? So there are countless philosophies, but although attempting to reach the truth, they are all incomplete and mutually conflicting, being generated from illusory premises. So when we generate something from our illusory premises, means our personal sense perception or intellectual prowess, and not based strictly on Shastra, then we are dealing with illusion, right? Only when we are dealing with something that we know to be true based on Shastra, not because I experienced it or because it makes sense to me logically, but because it was given in Shastra through the instructions of the bona fide spiritual master and the examples of the sadhus. Only then are we actually dealing with reality, when we're acting accordingly, right? Not just accepting it in theory, but when we're actually acting according to what we know to be true because it's given in Shastra, not because our imperfect senses told us that this was the truth, or because our imperfect logic or our intellectual prowess or reasoning, because it made sense. No, because it's actually coming from Shastra, so we know it to be true, and actually acting accordingly. Only then can we actually understand the implications of reality and unreality. Otherwise, we're just foolish, right? If we're not properly understanding Krishna's true place, our true place, and then acting accordingly. So let's stop here to see if there are any questions or comments. Like there are none.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. For yes, we have to keep Krishna in the center all the time. Whatever we are doing, need to see Krishna Arpanam. So that is the main thing.
One thing I meant to start with on this verse, unfortunately, I didn't have time to take notes for today's class. Usually I do that when I'm there. This week has been very busy. But what I wanted to say at the beginning is a few times this came up recently um, where it was said that who could tolerate even a moment of separation from Krishna,
Yeah.
right? And then so today it's similar, but now it's about hearing topics of Krishna. Who in human society can be satisfied without hearing sufficient talk? So it's the same thing as who can tolerate even a moment of separation from him. But this is now just specifically talking about the ears. So who can be satisfied without hearing sufficient talk of the Lord, whose lotus feet are the sum total of all places of pilgrimage, who is worshipped by great sages and devotees? And then the effects of it. Such topics can cut off the bondage of family affection simply by entering the whole ears, right? So the potency that's there. Now, it doesn't mean that that's actually going to happen just from the sound vibration going into our ear. It has the potency because Krishna is there in its name and his pastimes, etc. But we also have to become qualified recipients for Krishna's mercy. We have to actually accept his mercy. So that's also there. But yeah, there's this parallel that's been going on, because the other thing about tolerating the moment of separation, how it's possible if one actually understands Krishna. It came up a couple times already before this. So now this is coming up again. So this is a common theme of, once we actually understand who Krishna is, what reality is, then who could even tolerate any bit of illusion, right? So it becomes contagious, like culture. So like when you want to make yogurt, right? You have warm milk and you put just a little bit of culture in there, and then the whole thing turns to yogurt, right? So this automatically happens uh, if we're receptive. Okay. Does anyone want to add anything?
It is really very good. And then Shastras tells a lot of things. If we just, look at even Bhagavad Gita, whole thing, it tells our life how to live and what to do. Simple things are there, but following is not. So that makes, I feel. And we don't have that much knowledge. And we need to get that. That's why Sadhu Sangha, and somebody tells that.
Well, as Prabhupada mentioned in today's purport, that Bhagavad Gita is the elementary study to understand the difference between the spirit and matter. And then we have Srimad Bhagavatam. So Bhagavad Gita teaches us that we should surrender to Krishna. That's the final
That's
conclusion.
true. Yeah.
And then Srimad Bhagavatam shows us how to surrender to Krishna, because it has all these stories of these devotees who have successfully surrendered to Krishna under various different circumstances. And the other thing that Srimad Bhagavatam does is it helps us get to know Krishna more deeply,
Good.
not only in his form of Shama Sundar, but
Mhm.
in all the various forms that he expands himself as to reciprocate with his specific devotees. All right, so the devotees are always influencing what he does,
Yeah.
right? Which is pretty far out, because he could do anything he wants. He doesn't need anything, but he likes
Yeah.
to go out of his, not really, nothing's out of his way, but he likes to do seemingly strange things to satisfy his devotees, right? So when Bhumi Devi was knocked from her from her uh, from her
Burden.
position, from her position, then Lord Varaha, he came as a boar. And for most people, that's very strange, because why would God, who's unlimited and he can do anything with anything, take such a filthy form, a pig? Pigs are
Yeah.
non-sentient. Screwed up, disgusting stuff and eat it. But that was the perfect form for him because Umi's earth and she was out of her place and he had to,
With his, yeah.
nuzzle her up. And so it was perfect. And we see that he does these things. He comes in these perfect forms for the devotees. Lord Narasingha, that was all for Prahlad Maharaj, to show that even if we think we've found all of the loopholes of the material world, and we think that we've figured out the death problem, we've become immortal. It shows that very easily when there's a devotee involved, Prahlad Maharaj, that that there's a very, very easy form that's just going to come in without any effort whatsoever.
Yeah.
Just to show how foolish we are, right? So Hiranyakashipu was an example of one who was foolish and didn't understand the difference between reality and illusion, right? He thought he did. He thought he was very intelligent. He underwent severe austerities none of us would be able to do. None of us have the capacity to do the austerities that he did. He got very intelligent benedictions. At first he asked to become immortal, and Brahma said, I can't give that to you because I'm not immortal. So he thought, okay, can't be killed in the day or the night, in the land or the sky, inside or outside, any weapon by any man or beast. He thought he covered all of his bases. Demigod, he thought he had it all. How could he possibly be killed? Right? But so Krishna came in that form for Prahlad Maharaj because he was.
But poor Hiranyakashipu couldn't think of this.
Of course not, because he didn't have faith in Krishna.
He just thought not land and not sky like that. But
Yeah,
he couldn't think how he is going to kill with his nails. No. Yeah, there's a lot of things up there.
He comes in various forms. So even Korma, right? He had a little
Kurmatara also, yeah.
And it seems like a strange thing, but it's just so he could perform that pastime to create all of these very important things in the world that we can take advantage of, that help us out. And even that pastime, it shows Krishna had to expand himself in so many different ways in order to have that pastime happen. He's Korma. He was the Sahasra Sirsha Purusha up top that was holding the mountain steady, otherwise it was wobbling. He had to personally enter each of the demons and demigods to inspire them after they got tired. They gave up. Dhanvantari, Mohini Murti, so many different things he did in that pastime just to make it happen. Of course, not a blade of grass moves without his will.
And nothing is equal to Krishna. It's not impossible.
Yeah. So we see all of these pastimes, even though they seem strange, they're quite sweet because it's Krishna showing that he'll do anything to please his devotees, right?
Yeah.
And his devotees just want to do anything to please him. So it's a competition really between the devotees and Krishna of who can please the other one. Instead of in the material world, it tends to be that I want to be pleased. No, I want to be pleased. And it's a competition in the other direction to see, who can get the most pleasure from another person. So yeah, we have this reflection here. We're dealing with the shadow instead of the substance. And the only way to get out of it is through the Shabda Pramat, from understanding what the Shastra is saying, through the Guru's instructions, from the Sadhu's examples, and acting accordingly, right? To actually understand the implications of reality and
Thank you very much for a very nice class. Yeah, a lot of things we need to know.
Anything else before we...
I remember that sloka, Tulyana api lave. Oh God. I'm not able to remembering that sloka. Nothing equal to the devotees or something like that.
Can't find my database. There it is.
I have in my book.
Atma Tulyani?
Hmm?
Oh no, that's a different one. No, I didn't find it.
Tulyanam lave napi na swargam na punarbhavam bhagavat sanga sangasya matyanam kim utasisha. The value of moments of association with the devotees of Lord cannot even be compared to the attainment of heavenly planets of liberation from matter, and what to speak of worldly benediction in the form of material prosperity, which are for those who are not meant for death. Remember that one. So devotee association is other things, it makes a lot of difference.
Yes. More valuable than we can possibly imagine.
Yeah. Let's remember that. So,
Thank you.
thank you very much, Prabhu. The nice
Anything
talk.
else before we stop? Here, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda.
Jai.
Vancha kalpataru
Patrubhasya Kripasindhu Pitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo. Thank you very much, Prabhu.